everyone, I hope you're doing well and staying safe. Today I am going to be making a tutorial on data visualization for a globe using Three.JS. I recently did a hackathon for the State Department where I had to visualize data which they gave us and display it for the impact of American diplomacy, and so I wanted to make a tutorial for anyone else who wanted to learn how to do something like what I did. So as you can see on the right hand side we have an instruction box, which if you click on the button on the left it makes it disappear and reappear. And then we have our globe obviously with the Skybox, and if you click on the box for click here for countries, it will load the data on the screen, and we have this little info box here. So say you want to click on a point, you will get the region, and it's color coded by the region too, so the user knows the differentiation between each color point. And then you have the different data which we have in our data set. You can zoom in, zoom out, click and drag to use everything, because this is the OrbitControls of Three.JS. And the camera will zoom in based upon where you click. So without further ado, let us get into this tutorial. To start off, you're going to need to download and install NodeJS. So if you just type in NodeJS, it's going to be nodejs.org, and then you're going to want to download the latest version, which as of 8/26/2020 it's version 12.18.3. So just click and download that. Once you download that and have it installed, you're going to want to go over to my GitHub and get the starter files that I have for y'all. So if you go to github.com/David Grice, which is my name, as of 8/26/2020, this is what the front looks like. I may have more to pinpoint when you view this. So you just click on repositories. It's going to be the one titled Three.JS tutorial globe. So just click on here. Then on the right hand side, well, you'll see the start folder here. Then on the right hand side where it says code, you just click on the button to download. Download the zip. Save the file. Then you can go to where you want to go. In my case, I'm doing mine on my desktop, so you just want to download and save it to the desktop, and then it will download and save. So once it's on the desktop, you want to unzip it. So you want to extract files here, and inside the folder you'll have the start folder right here. Depending upon your code editor, you can use what you want. In my case, I am using Visual Studio Code, so VS for Visual Studio Code. Then as you can see, it opens up a blank window for me to begin my coding. So I'm going to first open the folder. It's going to take me to, well, because I had this last opened here, it's going to take me to my temp. So if I go to the Three.JS and then start, and here's my public folder, I want to select this start as my main project, so I'll select that folder. And when I open that up, you can see that I already have some of the pre-packaged folders and files. Here's my app package lock. So you're going to want to open up a new terminal and install some library. So if you click on terminal tab right here and say new terminal, it'll open up this little dialog box right here. And what you want to do is type in the command npm install, and then you want to install Express, which is the JavaScript library that we're going to be using. In addition to Express, we also need to have Three.JS installed too, so I'm going to say npm install, and then it's just 3, and this will install the Three.JS library as well. And if you take a look at the package.json under the dependencies, I'm sorry, these are dependencies. So if you look at the dependencies, they'll say Express, and then the version, and 3, and the version. So this lets the Node.js know what dependencies we're looking for. So now that we have our everything figured out and everything ready to go, what we first want to do is go to our public folder and then click on the index. As you can see, I have all of the HTML pre-filled. That way we don't have to spend a whole lot of time going through and coding it. But for the time being, I'm actually going to comment out all of the HTML code. That way we can just render the globe first and then go into the beautification later on for the divs and all that. So just highlight from the ID title box all the way down to the last div before the script and press Command and then /. This will let Visual Studio know to comment out the blocked code. And if you notice right here, the script tag, it is a type module that we're loading in, and then the source is the globe.js. Or if you go to the JS and globe, so JS, it's this file which is referencing to, and right now all we have inside this file is the console.log. So that's our script. This is our main application that we're using for Three.js. And then at the top here, you can name this whatever you want. I'll just name this capitalized globe visual. And then underneath the title, we have the link. This is going to be our CSS file that we're using for the making of the website beautiful. As you can see, it's referencing the CSS style.css. So if we go to a style on the left and click on style.css, again, I have this pre-filled out with all the necessary IDs from our divs. So now that we have the files and everything figured out, if we open up our terminal and then we just type in npm start, it will start, and then I'll say visit this link here to look at the program. So if you press Control and left click on this URL, it depends on what browser you use, but in my case it's going to be opening up in Microsoft Edge, and right now there's just an empty canvas. But if you press Control, Shift, and I, it will open up the inspector, and you can see within the inspector that we have our HTML head right here, and then you have the necessary information for the head, and then the body, all the commented body out, and then you can see the script which is being referenced. In our case it's globe.js. So it does run, and it's up and going. You will see this error here, failed to load a resource, and it's the favicon.ico. I do not really know what this is. I assume it's an icon which only comes with Node.js, but it it's not in our source files, so don't worry about this. It's just a dummy. It's just a dummy error. Don't worry about it. So if we go back to our code, what we want to do is first take a look at the data so you can know what we're dealing with. As you can see, we have within our data, it's in a JSON file. I already did all the data cleaning and stuff for the JSON file, so you don't have to worry about missing data or anything of that nature. So you can see we have different categorizations, so country, languages, latitude, longitude. These are crucial because this is what Three.js is going to be used in order to display the points on the globe. We have the region, so it can be color-coded if you want to do it that way, or we just have the region data. And then we have the population, the area square miles, the GDP per capita, and the climate. So this is the data that I chose, and I cleaned it and everything, but you can use whatever data you want as long as you have the latitude and longitude. This is very crucial. Without this, you're not going to be able to map onto the globe. So that is the data. And then if you look inside our images file, we have these various images which we're going to be using in order to make the globe look like an actual globe instead of just a sphere. And then we have the Skybox data here, so space back, space bot, front, left, right, and top. So now that we're done with looking at our files, let's go to the main JavaScript, and as of right now you can just see it says console.log. We are going to get rid of that, and we're going to now begin implementing the code to get our program up and running. So first things first, because we're using Node.js, we have to import the necessary libraries from to let Node.js know we're using Three.js. So we're going to say import, and then we're going to say the asterisk, which is Shift-8 on the American keyboard, and say as, and then capitalized 3 from, and then we're going to give it a path to pull the files from, and we're going to say /build /3.module.js. Putting OrbitControls next, we'll say import, and we'll use the open and closed curly braces, and we're going to say capitalized orbit, capitalized controls, going to say from, then we're going to give it the path, so we'll say JSM /controls /OrbitControls.js. So this is importing the OrbitControls from the OrbitControls.js file. Next, what we want to do is make sure that the data is being imported correctly. So I'll just put a comment here, data import, and then first I'll say create an array to store the data. So I'm going to say let data equals this. Next thing we want to do is use a command to get the data, and because this is a local data, you can't just import the data, you have to actually use a XHTTP request. It's just what Node needs. So we'll say let XHTTP. This is a variable, you can call it what you want, but I'm calling mine XHTTP equals new XML HTTP request, and it's a function, so you want to put the open close parentheses followed by a semicolon or a colon. Then next we're going to say XHTTP dot on ready state change is equal to the function, and then we want to do an open and closed curly brace, and make sure you put a semicolon after the curly brace. And then we're going to say here if this dot ready state is equal to 4 double and say this dot status is equal to 200. Then we're going to have another open closed curly brace. We're going to say let response equals to JSON.parse, because this is a JSON file we're trying to parse. We're going to say XHTTP.responseText colon, and then we're going to say let output is equal to the object.values, because it's the values of the JSON file that we're wanting to get. And we're going to say response, and then I'm going to say for, and then we're going to do a for loop here. So I'm going to say for let I equals 0, I is less than the output dot length, so whatever the length of our JSON file is. I'm going to say I++, then we do open closed curly braces, then I'm going to say data, because that's my array here, data dot push, and I'm going to say output, and then I'm going to say sub I. So for all of the data which is in the values of output, I'm going to take this and push it to my data array, so I'll have it stored in the array. Now, after this, we're going to say now after this is done, we're going to say XHTTP.open, because we have to tell this where the data is stored. And then it's going to be a get response, because we're trying to get the data, and then we're going to give it the file path from where we're getting it. In this case, it's going to be .. because it's inside of our, close this, it's inside of our data folder right here. And because the globe.js is inside the JS folder, we have to do 2 dots to go to the parent folder, and then it's stored inside data. So after the / I'm going to say data, and then inside of our data, the file name is called final_data.json. And then in this case, it's going, so this is something which is a Boolean file, it's true or false, and it lets you render the data right away, or you can tell it to wait until you click on a button to have it send and receive the request. So I'm going to set this to true, that way it doesn't send or receive the request until the button's clicked on. And so after this, we want to send the data, so it's xhttp.send. And so now then, if I type in console.log data, actually first let me set this to false. So if I type in console.log.data and I press save, One thing bad about Node is that it doesn't automatically update. You have to actually refresh the page. So go to wherever you're rendering the application and refresh. And if you see here in my console, I have an array of 180 objects. And it's so under this, you can see that I have the data which is loaded in. It splits it into from 0 to 99, so it splits into 100. But it's all there. Don't worry about it looking like this. It's all in one file. So you have the necessary data. So if you click on this further, it'll give you everything which we have, just like it's stored inside our JSON file. So now that we have the data, what we want to do is begin the Three.JS code to make sure that we can create a canvas, create a camera, and render it to the canvas. So first, I want to say Three.JS code, and then after this, I'm going to do another comment, say create scene objects will be placed, and then put here kind of like a stage. And this is going to be our scene variable, so I'll say const scene is equal to new 3.scene. And this is case sensitive, so make sure you capitalize obviously 3 because we are importing it as 3, and then scene, make sure it's capitalized as well. And then from here, what we want to do now is create the camera. So I'm going to say as a comment, create camera to see objects, say kind of like sitting in the audience, if I can spell audience correctly, of course. So this is what the camera does. It essentially is like you sitting in the audience and you're seeing what is on the stage or seeing what the scene has to offer. So I'm going to say const camera is equal to new 3.perspective camera, and then I'm going to give it the parameters 75 and window dot inner width divided by window dot inner height, and then I'm going to get the value 0.1 and then 1000. Yes, so I'm going to create a camera. So this is the perspective camera that we're going to be using, and it's going to have these inputs right here. If you go to the Three.js website, which is 3js.org, and go to the documentation, and then you can either search here if you want, just type in camera. Because we're using the perspective camera, it's going to have, this is just what you do for the function. And in the perspective camera, you have the field of view, which is the number, the aspect, and then which is the height and width of the screen in our case. And then you're going to have the camera view, how far away you want to view objects and how near you want to see objects, so it goes near and far. So in this case, I have it set to 75 for the field of view. Then the aspect is the entire body of the, well, in this case the entire window of the HTML document, and then we have the near set to 0.1 and the far set to 1000. So once we have the camera set up, the next thing we want to do is get the renderer. So I'm going to say create and put renderer to display the created objects, then kind of like the people who place the different sets on the stage. Because this is what the renderer does. It places it puts into existence the objects which we want. So in this case I'm going to say const renderer, because the renderer is not going to change. I'm just using the WebGL renderer. I'm going to say is equal to new 3 dot WebGL, make sure the GL is capitalized, renderer, and because this is a function, you want open close parentheses. Then we want to say renderer dot set size, and we're going to have it set to the size of the window dot inner width, comma window dot inner height. And then what we want to do is take this render and append it to the DOM. So I'm going to say document.body append child, because this is a child of the body. I'm going to say renderer dot DOM element, and the element is capitalized, and it's element, not elements. My apologies. And then from here, what we want to do is create the we want to have the controls enabled as well. So I'm just going to add them now, that way we can get away with it. So I'll just say create controls so that we can interact with the objects and or have interactivity. And then I'm going to say const controls is equal to new. Now in previous Three.JS, because we're using NodeJS, it's different, but in previous you'd have to say 3.OrbitControls, but because we're using Node, you don't have to say 3. It's just OrbitControls. Trust me, if you're using Node.js and you want to use 3, make sure you do it this way, otherwise you'll have a headache trying to figure out why your OrbitControls aren't working. And we're going to pass in two elements to this. The first one is the camera, and the second one is the renderer.DOM element. So now that we have the controls, we have the renderer in the scene. This is actually all that you really need to actually have things set up, because now all you have to do is animate it and put it on the screen. But let's add an object just to get things going. So in this case, I'm going to Three.JS, and I'm going to add a actually just let me create a scene. So if we go down here, see how it says under the creating a scene on Three.JS, you see it has geometry, material, and then the name of everything. I'm just going to copy and paste this code into here. So again, I'm going to instead of saying var, I'm going to say let. Oh, and by the way, just a shortcut, if you have this variable set up and see how it has these other two highlighted, if you press Control D, this is a shortcut which will make a cursor at that location. And so whenever you want to replace multiple things at one time, it's just a nice shortcut which the Microsoft team put together for it. Anyways, so this is the geometry, and the geometry which you want is a box geometry. This is just the demo to just make sure that things are rendering. Then we have the material here, which is the basic material, and you just pass in a color. In this case it is, I think it is hex, and then you have the type that you want, or the final variable, which is comprised of material and geometry. So in this case it's cube. So you pass in the geometry, material, and then you say scene.add, and then you say add the thing that you want to add it to. And then you want to set the camera position to a different number, because by default it's set at 0, 0. So you want to make sure that it's at a positive position, that way it pushes out so you can see the scene. And then we go down here to the rendering, and this is the animation function. So you have the default function to request animation frame. That way, whenever this is running in the background, it doesn't constantly run and drain battery on the laptop. It'll just run whenever you switch back to that tab. And then you have the render.render scene, because you always want to pass it in to update it. So now, if I refresh this, we should have a oh, it's because I misspelled it. It's perspective, not prospectus. My apologies. There we go. Then, see? we have OrbitControls enabled, so you have that. You can zoom in, zoom out, and we still have the data here too, so our data is good to go. Now keep in mind, see how I closed the sidebar right here, and there's this white thing, this white empty space. That's because the window resized, but because the window resized, we don't have a function to automatically let it resize with the resizing of the window. So if you refresh the page, now it's back to full screen. You know, if you press Ctrl-Shift-I, then press Ctrl-Shift-I, it still be rendered to the full screen. It doesn't adjust based upon the resizing of the window. So we're going to correct this. But first, let me go to the style.css. If you look over here, see how there is this thing called overflow. It's what makes the sidebars appear and the scroll appear. So what we want to do is get rid of all of this and just make it one scene without any movement. So in order to do that, we want to go to our style.css, and in our style.css, under this star right here, I already have it set. We can just say overflow colon, and we're going to say hidden. That will remove the bars, and then we want to set the margin to 0. That way it's not floating around in space, it's going to be at the 0, 0 origin. And then I'm going to have the color of the text by default set to white. That way it makes it easier for us to display. So then if we go back here and refresh the page, now you see that there is no overflow and that the canvas is at the 0, 0 position. But the cube is still there. So now that we know that the camera is working and that everything is good to go for that, what we now want to do is first get the function to resize, and I'm actually going to change the animate function too. So I'm going to do the window resize. So I'm going to say function on window resize, and then it's going to be for the on window resize, it's the camera aspect, which we have to update. So camera aspect is equal to window.inner width divided by window.inner height, and say camera.update. Then it's going to be projection matrix, and then I'm going to say renderer dot set size, and then I'm going to say window dot inner width, comma window dot inner height. So we actually don't need any of this. That was my mistake. I'm also going to call the render function here too. And then here's the animate function, and I'm going to create above here called the function, call it render, and then I'm just going to take this and pass it in here. So, and then for the animate we want to have controls.update, so say controls.update. So it's just a little bit more clean. And then you want to have a window event listener. So because we have the function down here, we can just say right here, let's say add event listeners. So DOM knows what functions to use when objects and or items are interacted with. And the first one we're doing is window.add event listener. It's going to be resize, so whenever the window resizes, we're going to call the function on window resize. You can call this whatever you want. I call it on window resize because I like to name my functions like what they are supposed to be doing. And then the inherit inherit Boolean value is false, because we only want to have it in when the event listener is triggered. Oh, that's because it didn't capitalize matrix. Capitalization is crucial for this, so let me try this again. There we go. Now it works. I had a little typo there. So, see how I opened the inspector, and it's here, zooming out, all that. Now it works. So, that is good to go. Okay, so now that we have everything working and all of the confusion is out, we're now going to begin adding the, we're going to get rid of the geometry, and we're going to begin making our globe. So first and foremost, I'm going to go and add a comment, create Earth, and then I'm going to first I'm going to load in the textures that we have inside our images. So I'll say and call this Earth map. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to say is used for the basic texture, which has the various continents, countries, etc. on it. And this is going to be the variable Earth map is equal to new 3.texture loader, and this is capitalized. Texture loader dot load, and then under here I have to go up to the parent folder, and then I'm going to go into the images folder, and then we're saying Earth map 4K.jpg. Then I'm going to do an Earth bump map. So I'm going to say Earth bump map is used to give the texture some depth, so it is more appealing on eyes and data visuals. I'm a little bit of a dyslexic when it comes to typing, so I'm going to call this Earth bump map. You can call it whatever you'd like. I'm going to say is equal to new 3.texture loader dot load, and then again I'm going to pass it into the parent folder, go into the images folder, and this is called Earth bump 4K.jpg. Then I'm going to make one more, and this can be the spec map. So I'll say Earth spec map gives the Earth some shininess to the environment, allowing reflectivity off of the lights, which we'll be adding lights after we create the Earth. So then I'm going to say let Earth spec map equal new 3.texture loader dot load, and then again go to the parent folder, images, Earth spec 4K.jpg. And if you go to the images folder right here, you'll see that the Earth bump map, the Earth map, and then the Earth spec is right here. I do have other images in here because I was playing around with them, but I'm just using these three for right now. Now I'm going to create the geometry of the Earth, so I'm going to call this geometry. And I'm going to say is what the shape and or size of the globe will be. And in this case, I'm going to say let Earth geometry, this is my variable name, you can call it whatever you'd like, is equal to new 3.sphere geometry, and make sure that it's capitalized because otherwise it will not render. Then we can pass in the variables 10, 32, and 32. If you go to the Three.JS website and type in, I think it's just sphere geometry, it'll give you the radius, then the width, and then the height. So that's what I'm doing. My radius is, well, in this case it's 532, 32. In my case, I bumped it up to 10. So with every mesh, you have to have a geometry, and you also have a material. So this is going to be the material that we're going to be using. Let's say is how the globe will look like. In this case, I'm going to say let earth material is equal to new 3.mesh fong material. Then, because I'm going to pass it in a couple of parameters, I'm going to use this open close parentheses, and inside the open close parentheses I'm having open close curly braces. So what we're doing is passing in for the mesh fong material. If you type in, I think it's just mesh fong material. Mesh fong material. These are the different parameters. This is kind of what it looks like, and these are the different parameters which it has: the bump map, the bump scale, the color, emissiveness, all this sort of stuff. These are all the parameters that you can have. In my case, I'm just going to use the map, and then we're going to use the earth map that we called previously, so earth map. Then we put a comma because this is a list of attributes. Next one is going to be the bump map, so bump map, and I'm going to say earth bump map, earth bump map, because I'm passing in this one. Then I'm going to say the bump scale, so bump scale, and I want to set this to 0.10. And I'm going to say specular map, and I'm going to pass it the earth spec map. Then I'm going to say specular, and this is going to be the color. I'm going to say new 3.color, and then I'm going to pass it the color gray. You can pass it whatever you'd like, but in my case, I found that gray was just very easy on the eyes. So then in here I'm going to put this next comment and say earth is the final product, which ends up being rendered on scene, also is used as a parent for the points of interest, which in this case it's not going to be used as a point. It's going to be used as kind of like the parent, the grandparent. So I'll actually fix that as a grandparent. So then I'm going to say let earth, which is my variable. Again, you can call it globe, you can call it sphere, whatever you want. I'm calling it earth. Say is equal to new 3.mesh. Make sure mesh is capitalized, and in here I'm going to pass it the geometry and the material. So I'm going to say earth geometry and the earth material. Now, after you create a object, you have to add it to the scene, otherwise it will not be displayed. So then under here I'm going to say add the earth to scene, and then I'm going to say scene.add, and notice how add is not capitalized in this case. Just say earth. So now if we go back to our thing here, refresh it, it's going to be black because we have no lights. Forgot to put that in. So now we're going to add the lights. So I'm going to create the lights now. So I'm going to say create variable to store array of lights because I want to set up a couple lights. So I'm going to say let lights equals an array that's empty. And then I'm going to create a function called createLights. I'm going to say is a function which creates the lights and adds them to the scene. So then under here I'm going going to say function, call it create lights. And then I'm going to pass it scene as the variable. Even though it's a global variable, I'm still going to have it like so. And then I'm going to put in the first light. So I'm going to say lights sub 0, so the first position in the array is equal to new 3.pointLight, and I'm going to pass it in a hex value for the color of the light. In this case, it's like a bluish color, so let's say £, which is shift 3, 004, D, which is lowercase, and because hex is case sensitive, make sure that you put the lowercase d, not the uppercase d. Just put 99. I'm going to set the values to 0.5 and 0. Now I'm going to copy this 3 more times, and to copy it, you can just press the Alt and Shift key, and if you do that, it puts a new line of the copied code. So I'm going to just change it to lights 1, lights 2, and lights 3 respectively. And so for light 1, I'm going to have it set to the same color and have the same value, 0.0, 0.5, and 0. The second light is going to be the same thing, only instead of 0.5, it's going to be 0.7. And light 3 is actually not going to be a point light, it's going to be ambient light. So ambient light, and you only need to pass in a hex value for the color, and in this case I'm going to have it be white, so £, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Fs. Now for each light you have to set a position for it, because by default it's 0, 0, 0, and because I want to have these spread out to cover and encapsulate most of my globe, I'm going to say lights sub 0 dot position dot set, and I'm going to pass it x, y, z coordinates. So in this case it's going to be 200, 0, negative 400. You can pass in whatever values you want, but I found that these for the globe look really good. Then I'm going to change the position for the 3 point lights that we have, so 0, 1, and 2, not 3. So for the second value, the 200 is still going to be there, but instead of 0, it's going to be another 200. In this case, I'm going to have a positive z value of 400. And then the last position is going to be negative 200, negative 200, and then negative 50. Now, once the positions are set, we had to add all of our lights to the scene. So I'm going to say scene.add. Then I'm just going to copy this, say lights 0, and then just copy the code 4 more times, put 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to have this pass in to another function. So I'm going to just say function add scene objects, pass it to scene, actually camera and renderer, which which you actually don't need any of this because these are because these are all global variables. So you're just going to say create lights, because it's a function, you need to have the function, and then after here you're going to call the function, but in my case I'm going to call it right after the animate. Actually no, I'm going to call it right here. So I'm going to say add scene objects, adds the items to this scene, and so I'm going to say add scene objects. Now then, so we actually do need to pass in scene here. And pass in scene here. So we actually do need the scene. After here, put in the mistake. It's because the camera position was not at the proper thing. And because the globe has a radius of 10, it's super big, so you'd have to scroll up for a couple times before you got it. Cool. So next, what I'm going to do is add the clouds to our nice sphere. See? So you can zoom in. This is what I was saying. See? So next I'm going to do is add clouds to the sphere to make it look more like the Earth. So what I'm going to do is after the Earth here, I'm going to say I'm going to say add clouds to the Earth object, and from here I'm going to create a variable called let Earth cloud geo, because we need a geometry for this. I'm going to say is equal to new 3.sphere geometry. I'm going to have it set to the same properties as the Earth, 103232. Next I'm going to add the texture, so add cloud texture to the Earth, and I'm going to make this variable let Earth clouds texture equal to new 3.texture loader, and I'm going to load in the image. So in this case I have to go to the parent folder, go to images, and go to Earth hires clouds 4k.jpg, which is this Earth hires clouds 4k, and the K is capitalized. .jpg. This doesn't really matter. I'm pretty sure it will recognize it by default because you can't have the same file name, lowercase or uppercase, but still it's nice to be consistent. So after the texture, what we need is to add the material, because again a mesh needs both a material as well as geometry. So I'm going to say add cloud material, and here I'm going to say let Earth material clouds equal to new 3.mesh Lambert material, and because I'm passing in multiple parameters I need to open and close curly braces in between my parentheses, and then in here I'm going to set the color equal to 0x123456Fs because it's hexadecimal and that's white. Next I'm going to say map, say Earth clouds texture, Earth clouds texture, because this is what we want to add in as the map texture. I'm going to say the transparency is equal to true, because this is a sphere. By default it's not going to be transparent. And then last I'm going to set the opacity to 0.4. Now right here, because I have the material and I have the geometry, I need to add it to the mesh. So the final mesh I'm going to create is called let Earth clouds equal new 3.mesh, and in here I'm going to say Earth clouds geo, Earth cloud geo, comma, space, Earth material clouds. And then what you need to do is set the scale of the clouds, because by default it's the same size as our previous as our Earth. So let's put here. So because we have the same size as the previous Earth, what we need to do is scale it. So I'm going to say scale above the Earth sphere mesh, and then I'm going to say Earth clouds.scale.set, and in here I'm going to say 1.015, and I'm just copy this 2 more times, like for some, make it a little bit more consistent. So because we have it scaled, it will be a little bit bigger, but still not too big to make it seem ugly. Then I'm going to add on the last comment here, make a child of the earth. And then I'm going to say earth.add earth clouds. So when we initially make the earth, we're adding it as a child to the scene, but because I only want to have the material added as a child to the earth because it's interacting only with the earth, not the scene itself, I'm adding the clouds as a child to the earth. It helps, especially later, just keep things nice and tidy, and will help later on too. It's because it's Meshly and Bert's with a T. That is my mistake. So as you can see, we now have clouds, and if you notice the scale right here, there's a little bit of a spacing between the globe and the cloud geometry, so that is what the final earth looks like. But we're far from done because we still need to add our skybox as well. So after the clouds are here, I want to add the skybox to make it look a little bit more nice and beautiful. Give it a little more character. So I'm going to create a function called create skybox. And I'm going to say it allows the scene to have more attractiveness to it, and in this case, by having the blue starred images around Earth. So my function is called create skybox, and I'm going to pass it this scene, and then I'm going to say const loader is equal to new. Oh, before I do this, I need to make sure I have the colon at the end. So new 3, and because this is because it's skybox, it has 6 sides: back, bot, front, left, right, top, and it's going to be a cubed texture as a result. So we're going to say new 3.cube texture loader, and then I'm going to say const texture is equal to loader.load, and then it's going to be passed in an array. And just so you know, this texture is local to the create skybox function, so that's why we can get away with using texture, because I think I used it once before. But regardless, this is a local variable, it's not a global variable, so it's okay to have it mentioned here. So in here, because it's an array, I need to pass it the path of the skybox. So in this case, I want to go to the parent folder, which is public, and I want to go to the images. So I'll say images. And then this does matter the order which you want, which needs to be put into the array from 0 to 5 because it goes to 6, so 0 to 5. So first we want to add the space right.png, and then I'm just going to copy this code 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more times. Get rid of the last comma. So we want the space right, just space right. Then we want the opposite of right, which is left. Then we want the top, and then we want the opposite of top, which is bottom. In this case, I have it called bot. And then we want the front, and the opposite of front is back. So this will load in the photos in their proper order. That way, when it renders to the scene, it will render like an actual skybox, and the images will not look bad. So then we want to take this and add it to the background of the scene, and background is an attribute of scene. So we're going to say after our const texture loader, in the space right here, we're going to say scene.background is equal to the texture. So because we have the skybox here, even though we have created the function, we haven't called it. So what we need to do is go down to our add scene objects, and in here we're going to say create Skybox and pass it in the scene. So now, since we have called the function, add it to the scene object function, and that function is being called right here. When we go to here and refresh the page, we should see the Skybox, and there it is. And as you can see, there is seamlessness between all the photos, so you can see what it looks like. Yeah, and I did choose the colors of the spotlights to kind of match the lighting of the Skybox, even though by default the Skybox has no light, it's just an image. I tried to match the colors to make it a little bit more copacetic. So now that we have the textures and everything loaded, and we have the entire scene ready to go, what we now want to do is make the data loaded onto our Earth. But before we do that, I want to make sure that we have the camera modified so you don't zoom in too close or zoom out too close. So here I'm going to say disable. I'm going to create a comment here to say disable control function, so users do not zoom too far in or pan away from center. Because if you look at this, you can use your arrow keys and the globe will go to the right, and if you go here, the globe will go to the left. It's not the globe that's moving, it's actually the camera which is moving. So I want to disable that, and no, I don't want to save. Actually, that was my bad. So in order to do that, I'm going to say update the controls. And again, if you go to 3js.org and under here go to controls, in this case it is OrbitControls. Under here you'll have how to initiate the OrbitControls, but these are all the properties of it. And if you notice that there is something called pan speed, enable pan, and I'm going to disable that. And I'm also going to set the min and max distance of the zoom. So I'm going to say min distance is equal to 12, and then controls dot max distance is equal to 30. You can update these however you want, but these are the variables I found to be most useful. And I'm going to say controls dot enable pan equal to false, because I do not want the user to pan away from the globe. Say controls dot update. I'm going to say controls dot save state. This saves the state of the controls. So if you ever add more functionality later on, these will be set as the default state, and you can also call them back later if you'd like. So now that we have the controls saved, what we want to do now is create the coordinates and add them to globe. So under here I'm going to say create and add coordinates for the globe, and I'm going to create a function to do this. So I'll say function add country coord, and I'm going to pass it in the earth, country, language, latitude, longitude, color, region, population, area, SQMI, square mile, and then say GDP underscore per underscore capita, and pass it the climate too. So from here what I want to do is first have the point of interest be a property of the coordinates. So I'm going to say, well, it has to be a sphere first and foremost. So I'm going to say let point of interest equal new sphere.geometry. And I'm going to have it set to 0.1 as the size, and then 32, 32. Next I'm going to say let lat equal latitude, which is the latitude being passed in to the function. And then I'm going to have it multiplied by math.pi divided by 180. And then say let lon equal longitude, and it's going to be negative longitude times, and then here math.pi divided by 180. Then I'm going to have a constant radius is equal to 10. Then say const phi is equal to 90 minus latitude times, and then I say math.pi divided by 180. I am just letting you know I found this code online, and if I can find the link I'll post it in the description. But this is a code which takes the latitude and longitude and puts it from a it just maps it from a 2D plane to a 3D sphere to a 3D plane using radius, phi, and theta. So next is constant theta is equal to ln plus 180, and say times math.pi divided by 180. So then we're going to pass it in two variables. The first is the mesh, and because we already have the point of interest as the geo, we only need to make the last thing. So we're going to say let material is equal to new 3.mesh basic material, and then to pass it in the property, I'm going to just say color is equal to color, because we're going to pass in the color of this function to add on the globe. And then I'm going to say let mesh, which is the final thing which is displayed, is equal to new 3.mesh like we've done before. In this case it's going to be the point of interest and then the material. And then I'm going to set the position, so say mesh.position. Oh, make sure you put a colon there. Position dot set, and then make sure you put a colon after that too. Yes, semicolon, and then you can say math dot cosine of the latitude times math dot cosine of the longitude times the radius, which is the what we passed in is 10. We're saying math dot sine of the latitude times radius, and make sure math is capitalized. Then we're going to say math dot cosine of the latitude times math dot sine, and then we pass it the longitude times radius. This is going to set the position of the mesh on the globe to the rightful place. So if Australia is added to the globe, it's going to set it to where Australia is located on our mesh. And then we have to rotate the mesh as well. So we're going to say mesh.rotation.set 0.0 and have negative longitude. We're going to say negative, or we're going to say latitude minus math.pi times 0.5 times 0.5. And this will rotate the mesh accordingly to match the where it is located on the globe. So then, because we have this taken care of, what we want to do now is create a function for the points, and on that I'm going to say function, call it change to country, because I also am going to have an instruction box. You don't need to pass anything inside of this. And then on here, first I'm going to have a placeholder for future stuff. Then on here I'm going to say get the data from the JSON file. In this case it's the array which we have. So from here I'm going to say for let I equal 0. I is less than data.length I++. And then in here I'm going to say if data sub I dot region, because our data, if you go into it, it has an attribute region. So I'm going to say if the region is equal to, and then I'm going to say in capital letters of Asia, EX, near east, because this is one of the attributes that we have, Asia X near east. Then I'm going to have it be add country coord, pass it in the earth, and then I'm going to say data sub I dot country, data sub I dot languages, data sub I dot latitude, data sub I dot longitude, and then I'm going to pass it the color yellow because we're matching our function up here. So we have these right here. So I'm passing it yellow. Then I'm going to say data sub I dot region, because I'm going to pass it the region attribute. It's a very long line of code, but after region, what we want to do is pass in the population. So data sub I dot population. I'm going to say data sub I dot, I'm going to say area SQMI, and then we're going to do data sub I dot GDP underscore per underscore capita, and the last thing we do is data sub I dot climate. And to make sure that you again, see, even I have a screw up here, which means that I have a screw up here. So if you see this country, languages, latitude, longitude, yellow, region, populations, area, per capita, climate, it's all here in the final data JSON. So in case you may have a misspelling, just go back to the final data JSON and look at how this is and just copy and paste onto here. But make sure you have things comma separated, so otherwise it will not load. So then, because I have this here, what I'm just going to do is copy paste this, because I don't really feel like writing this over and over. So I'm going to say else, and then just, okay, that did not copy how I wanted. So I'm going to say else if, just do this. Actually, you know what? Let's do Alt Shift. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's 11, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. I think I want one more. So anyways, let's get rid of that. That's fine. Just get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. Make it look clean. should get rid of all the errors. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yes, and I know for a fact there are 11 here. So I'm going to say next if the region is equal to, in this case I'm going to say near east. Instead, because we have all the data passed in, it doesn't matter. The country code. All I have to do is change the color. In this case, I'm going to call it orange. And then instead of Asia near east, I'm actually just doing there. Get rid of it. So the next one is northern. Make sure it's capitalized. Northern America. And here I'm going to pass it in light blue. And then the next region is going to be Western Europe. Pass it in the color cyan, which is like a baby type blue. Then I'm going to say Eastern Europe. I'm going to say red. And then I'm going to say the Baltics. And under the Baltics, I'm going to pass it the color purple. Of course, you can put whatever color you want. Next, I'm going to pass in the region c.w space of space ind space dates. I'm guessing it's just something of the Indonesian states. I don't know this name, but I'm going to pass it in the color orange again. Actually, yeah, orange. And then I'm going to pass in the next region, which is Northern Africa. And I'm going to pass it in a beige color. And then I'm going to do sub-Saharan, so Saharan Africa. And I'm going to pass in brown. Then I'm going to do Latin space and Amer dot space and Carib. This is how they're labeled in the data. And I'm going to pass it in gold. And then I'm going to pass in Oceania, which is where Australia is located. I'm going to call it light green. But because I have two oranges, I'm going to change. Actually, you know what? I'll keep it the same. Yeah, I'll keep it the same. So, because I have this here, and because I have this all added, if I pass in this country, now if I pass in this function, that is why, because it's a new 3-sphere geometry. What we want to do is create the data and add it to the sphere right here. So what I'm going to do is add the mesh user data dot country. This is an attribute of the mesh, and I'm going to set it equal to the country. I'm going to say mesh dot, and I'm just going to copy paste this code. So copy paste it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more times. Instead of country, I'm going to say language. I'm going to say color, region, say population, and then say area underscore SQ underscore MI. Then I'm going to say GDP per capita. Then I'm going to say climate. And actually I don't need any of this because what I forgot to do is add this to the clouds. Because I have the sphere of cloud over the main Earth, we have to add the points to the cloud and not to the sphere, otherwise they will not be seen. So in here I'm going to say Earth clouds dot add, and I'm going to say mesh. So I'm adding these points to clouds, and now so now it should work without any problem. When because this is set to true, to false. Yeah, there we go. They're added now, and they seem to be on the proper order. So if nothing's going to happen when you click on it because you don't have the Raycaster implemented yet, but all the points, as you can see, are added to the sphere. So we have Canada, United States, Mexico, South Africa, South America, not South Africa. This is Africa, my apologies. You have UK and everything. So we have all the points rendered on the screen, and they look like they are okay. Yeah, you have all the geometry there. Japan, Russia, yeah. And our zoom works too. So now what we're going to do is take this and make it so that we're going to implement the Raycaster, so you can click on it, and then after that, once we have that action added, we will begin to add the div elements to make the user interface. So let me do that now. Go back to the code. I'm going to set this to true, that way it doesn't load every time. But before I do any of that, what I want to do is add a function to remove the children. So whenever we render this, it doesn't add the children every single time. We want to make it as clean as tidy as we can. So after the renderer, I'm going to create the render function. I'm going to create another one under here called, I'm going to give the comment, removes the points of interest, freeing up memory and space to have better performance. Then call this function remove children. It sounds bad, but it's just the objects of the parent. And then call this let destroy is equal to earth clouds dot children dot length, and then I'm going to say while destroy minus minus, because it has to start from the end of the children and work its way back. We're going to say earth clouds dot remove, and then I'm going to say earth clouds dot children bracket destroy, because it's the position. Say dot material dot dispose, and that's a function. So you just do that one. I'm just copied 2 more times, but it's going to be done 1 more time because we're going to destroy the geometry too. Geometry. Geometry. Yes, so geometry. And then we're going to have it remove the children at last. So if you just do the children destroy, it's going to just remove the mesh, but you want to remove the material and geometry as well before you destroy the mesh. Otherwise, if this will leave these two here, and over time it will accumulate to just utter destruction of, let me close this, sorry. It's just going to be utter destruction of the memory. So you want to do this, and you want to add this function to the, not country coord, but the change coord, change to country. So you want to put it above here. So every time you call the function, it removes the old geometry before you add the new one. Nice. So once we have that done, what we want to do is now create the event listeners for the Raycaster, but in order to do that, we have to first call the Raycaster. So let's go up to where the controls are located, and under the controls, we're going to put here create Raycaster for mouse interaction, and say const Raycaster is equal to new 3.Raycaster, and this is capitalized to make sure you have it capitalized. Then we need to capture the mouse coordinates, so in here I'm going to say create vector 2 for mouse and mobile x, y coordinates. So I'm going to say const mouse for our mouse xy, and we'll call it a 3.vector2, and then I'm just going to copy paste this, but instead of mouse it's going to be touch. So I have mouse for one and touch for the other. Now what I'm going to do is go down to where we have the controls being updated and saved, and then I'm going to where we have these functions here, what I want to do is have 2 more functions for the Raycaster and interaction. So I'm just going to call this window.add event listener, pass it in click for the mouse, and then I'm going to pass in the function which I'm about to create called on window click, and then I'm going to set this to false. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but instead of click it's going to be touch start, and then I'm going to say on touch. And these are functions I'm about to create. I'm just calling them now so I don't have to worry about them later on. So then, as I said, the first one is going to be function on window click, and then you're going to pass it in an event, which is the clicking. And then first and foremost, what I'm going to do is say event.preventDefault. So you do not want this function firing off before it is called. I'm going to say mouse.x is equal to event.clientX divided by window.innerWidth times 2 minus 1. Then under here, it's going to be the mouse.y is going to be the negative of event client y, and then instead of width it's going to be height, make sure it's capitalized, and instead of minus 1 it's going to be times 2 plus 1. So then we're going to pass in the Raycaster, say Raycaster dot set from camera, pass in mouse comma camera, because camera is a constant, we don't need to worry about it. Say let intersects, so all of the objects which we've intersected, to Raycaster dot intersect objects of earth clouds dot children, because the points of interest are the children. And then for right now, all I'm going to do is say for let I is equal to 0, I is less than intersects dot length I plus plus, and make sure you add the colon, otherwise it will not be happy. And I'm just say console.log, and just say intersects, just intersects. That's set to false, that's why. Because it's true, it's not functioning. So if it's set to false, it's going to render the points on the map. So, say for instance, I want to I'll show you. So say for instance I want to click on here, it gives me an array, and that array gives me the first object, which is all of this. And if you go to the, I want to say it's the object, it gives you the information in here. Yeah, user data right here. So it gives you the climate and everything. But when you do the clicking, it's going to pass back multiple objects at once. Because I have it set to just the clouds, it's only going to do the cloud by default. But generally speaking, you want to only pass back the first object of the intersect. So you just want to pass back intersects 0 here. That way, say for instance, you have this, it's going to be right here, but if you kind of, I think it's like right here, it should pass back multiple objects. Sometimes it'll pass back multiple objects because it shoots through the entire globe on the other side too. So it just causes a lot of headache. So to prevent all of that, you just want to pass back the first object that the mouse hits. So that is that, and again, you can see that the data is here. And we get all the necessary information. What I want to do now is take a little break from the JavaScript and go into the HTML so that we can position all of the information on the web and to begin setting up our application. Okay, so welcome back. Had to take a little break. So here is all of the, I'm in the index.html, and as you can see, I commented all of this out to begin with, because otherwise if we had it shown, it would mess up the canvas. But because we're going to begin doing this now, may as well uncomment it out. So if I save it, go back here and refresh it, you can see that everything's going to be shifted down, and that's because I have the divs, and the divs have their own properties. And for the time being, I'm actually going to go into the globe and set this variable to true, that way it doesn't render the data. So refresh this, just be a globe and the buttons. So to begin, I'm going to start off with the title box. In here, I'm going to say Our Beautiful Earth. Then under the subtitle, I'm going to say by, you can put your name, I'm going to say my name. And so if I save this, and then I go back here, refresh, it's still not going to be here, but if you highlight up here, because I put the text to white, it's going to be there. So let's go into the globe, style, CSS, and then under the style, what we want to do is have the title box set the attributes of it. So I'm going to say justify content is equal to center, align content is going to be equal to center, flex, first I'm going to say display, and put to flex, and then I'm going to say flex direction is equal to columns, column, and then I'm going to put the position to absolute, and do the width of this is going to be 30 VW, and the height is going to be 30 VH. You are going to need to change these parameters based upon how they look on your screen, but for my screen and for what I'm doing, these parameters work well for me. It's going to look differently per pixelage of the screens, but I'm going to set the top to 35 VH. Then I'm going to have this going from the left at 35 VW. I'm going to have a border style, and the border style is going to be inset, which kind of gives it a rounded look to it. I'm going to say the border width is going to be 5 pixels, 5 px. Border radius is going to be 5%, and then I'm going to have the border color be red. So then if I do this, go back here and refresh, you can see that we have the square here. The inset kind of makes it point inward towards the globe. Then we have our text. Because again I have the divs here and there's content not filled, it's going to be a little bit off center, but on my screen when you had it at the final product, it was kind of dead on the center of the globe. Oh, just so you know, you cannot move the globe because of the div, but you can move the globe outside. There's probably a setting where you can probably set this transparency or something to true or whatnot, but just letting you know. So then, under the title, I'm going to have it be a padding dash top is equal to 5%. I'm going to do align self. Instead of start, it's going to be center, because I want things to be center. Text align is also going to be center. Do font size, because I want to have it kind of stand out. It's going to be 40 points. You can change the size however you want. I want this to be the entire width of the box, and I want the height to be split, so I'm going to say 50%. I'm going to do the padding bottom, it's going to be 5%. 5%. And then the best thing about how I have this lined up is you can just copy paste and go to the next line. So for the subtitle, this is going to be 5%, center, but instead of 30 point, I want the subtitle to be just a little bit smaller. That way it kind of brings out the main title, and I've set it to 30 point. So if I refresh this, you can see we have the title here, A Beautiful Globe, by insert your name, and it's a little bit more normal. And again, whenever you have this, these divs taken care of, you won't have any problem with that. So then after that, what I want to do is go into the instruction box and kind of set up the instruction and how it looks. So if we go to the instruction box, under HTML, I'm going to say the instruction title is instructions. You can call it whatever you like, but I'm going to say instructions. Then under my H1 here, I'm going to say click and drag your mouse around to see the full globe. And then I have a break here, so it adds a little spacing between the instructions. And say click on the points of interest to display their information. And say zoom in and out using your mouse scroll wheel. And you don't need periods if you don't want to. And then I'm going to say have fun exploring the world! Exclamation point. So then if we go back here and refresh, you can see that there's text here now. See how it's quite big. So then if my styles, what I'm going to do is go down to my instruction box here. In my instruction box, I'm going to say justify content center, and say align content center, display, it's going to be flex, and say flex direction is going to be column, and say border style is going to be inset, and I have the border radius of 5 pixels, have the border width to be 5. I'm sorry, I screwed this up. It's supposed to, the radius is 5% and the width is 5 pixels. Then I'm going to say border color is red. I'm going to do the background color to be black. Then I'm going to have the position be absolute. position absolute. And I'm going to say from the right side I want 5 VH. From the bottom I also want 5 VH. From the width I want 25 VW. From the height I want 20 VH. And then from opacity I want it to be 85%. That way 85%. That way when you have the box looking at the globe, you can still see some of the skybox behind it. Kind of makes it look more cool. So inside the instruction title, I'm going to, well, if you want to just take a look at what it looks like now, if you do refresh, see it's right here. And if you look, it's semi-legible, but you can see that there are some points right here being seen through the box. You can increase the opacity if you want, but I liked 85%. It seemed pretty cool. So going back here to the CSS, if you go to the title, I'm going to do align self is center, text align is also center, do font size of 30 point, because I want the instructions to be kind of bigger and easier to see to catch the reader's attention. I'm going to say width is going to be 30%. No, sorry, 100%. And then it's going to be a height of 20%. I'm going to have the font style oblique. It kind of gives it an italicized version, even though italics is its own style. And then you can do a padding of bottom, which I'm going to do of 5%. And then I'm going to have the color of this text be this very interesting gold color called burly wood. I found this and I've just fallen in love with this ever since I've discovered it. So if we save this and run it, see the instructions are kind of, I don't know what oblique really is, but it seems to be very italicized, kind of catches the attention. So in our div for the body, I'm just have it set to a width of 100%, and then have a height of 60%. And then under the H1, because the H1 you have to target it specifically, you can't just target the div, it has to be the H1 attribute. I'm going to have a padding of 0. Let me give this space here. And then I'm going to have a margin of 0. Padding top of 5%. I'm going to align the self at center. And the text align center. Do font size of 10 point. And then I'm going to have a padding bottom, because you want to give the bottom some feel for it too, at 5%. And then again, I'm going to have the color be burly wood. So as you can see, you could probably increase the font. So instead of 10, let's make it, see, the font up here is 30. Let's try 15. You just have to be careful because of the spacing. See, that's too big. And you probably don't need a padding top either. It looked different on my laptop when I first was testing this out. But because you have the padding down here, you can make it just a little bit interesting. So you can mess around with the instructions however you want, but again, it's going to vary based upon the screen and the screen size and the resolution, but I just play around with it to see how it looks on your personal screen. But for me, I kind of like this a little bit better, so this is what I'm going to stick with. But once we have all this done, next what we want to do is go down to our index HTML and look at the display, because we want to have the, actually before we do the display, it should be, no, actually I do want the display. So for the display, because we want to have it change between each and every, we want to hide and show the instructions, that way it doesn't, that way this isn't shown all the time taking up the space here. You want to let the user be able to see the globe fully and just it not be an eyesore. So in order to do that, first I'm going to put in the text here, choose an option below. You can say what you want. Then I'm going to put under country, click here for countries, which are the points of interest. Then under the instructions, I'm going to say click here for instructions. So if I save this, and now you can see that the buttons are here, and they have the click here for instructions. Now choose an option below. So then I'm going to go into the style and make this look a little bit more pretty. So under the display box, I'm going to first off say justify items, center, align dash content center, and do display, have it set to flex, and then do flex direction, be column, do a border style, let me spell border correctly, border style, have it set to inset, border width is 5 pixels, and then the border radius of 5%, and then have the border color red. Make sure you put a space. Then I'm going to do a background color be black. Make sure you save it and have the opacity set to 80%. Put the position of absolute, and then I'm going to have it display left at 5 VH, do bottom of 5 VH. Make sure you put a colon after the bottom, otherwise it's not going to work. Then you have a width of 15 VW. Make sure you spell width properly, and do a height of 20 VH. So then if we just go here and look at the display box, you can see that there's opacity here, and that the buttons are here. Choose an option below. See, it's a nice square, and it's at the bottom left. So then under the display box title, what you want to do is have a margin top of 5%. Do justify items of center, align content center, align self center, and text align center, and then you want to do width of 75%. You want to have a height of 15%. You want to have a border of inset, and make sure you have the border set, because if you didn't have the border but you had everything else, the border wouldn't show up. So just make sure you have the border labeled. And then you have the border color. I'm going to have this burly wood because I absolutely love this color. And then I have the border radius of 5%, and the margin bottom of 1%. Again, it's going to look different based upon your screen, so make sure you change to fit your personal screen accordingly. But if you refresh the page, and you can see that this is what it looks like. So it's kind of cool. The red and the gold kind of, or the burly wood, kind of complements each other. So then, for the country, what we want to do is have the color be black. The font style be oblique. We want the margin dash top to be 2%. we want the justify items to be center. Justify not align content center. Align self center. Then we want to do the text align to be center too. I'm just laying on with the best CSS writer, so I'm pretty sure there's some excess stuff which you don't need. But anyways, width we want to have be 75%. I'm still learning CSS. And we'll do height of 30%. And then we do a border of inset. Do a border color. And we'll have it burly wood. And then do a border radius of 5%, and then a border margin bottom be 1%. And if I refresh this, you see the button looks like this. You click it, nothing's going to happen, but it's a button. You probably make it, actually it looks a bit like a sore thumb, but you can mess around with it however you like. And then I'm just going to copy and paste this code and put it in the next for the instructions. But instead of it having a 2% margin top, I'm going to have a 1% margin top, and everything else stays the same except for the bottom margin. You get rid of that. Refresh this. Actually, you could increase the margin top from 1% to maybe 5%. Let's see how that looks on my screen. Yeah, it looks a little bit better. And actually, let me change that to 3%. Let's see how that looks. Let's see if 5% looks any better. Yeah, so you can spend an entire day just going over this. But let's change it to 4% and 4% because it. Yeah, much better. So it's a little bit more spaced evenly. But yeah, these are the buttons. So you click on it, nothing's going to happen. You know, do this, nothing's going to happen. But that's our button. So now what we want to do is create a box for the information being displayed. In order to do that, we're going to go back to our index.html and go down to the info box area here. So under here, I'm going to say information. Then under region, I'm just going to put a region :space. Then I'm going to do country :space. And language :space. Make sure you spell language properly. And do population :space. Then I'm going to do area (mile) shift 2 :space. And then under here I'm going to do GDP per capita :space. And then under here I'm going to do climate :space. Save this, go back here, and now you have this here at the top left hand corner. And so if you go back to our style.css, now we're going to fill in the last part of the styling for the info box. So first I'm going to say justify items :center. Align content center, and do display. In this case, I'm going to have display be none by default, but I'm going to have it be flex. Actually, no, first I'm going to set it to flex, because I want to have it later on show up only when we click on the button, but for now I'm going to have it display flex. Then I have the flex direction, not font, flex direction, flex dash direction be column. Then I'm going to do a border style of inset, do a border width of 5px, border radius 5%. Border color be red. The background color is going to be black. Opacity is going to be 80%. Position is going to be absolute, so I'm just change this to absolute. Then I'm going to have this right be 5 VH, and I have the bottom be 40 VH. Then I'm going to have the width be 15 VW, and the height be 50 VH. And have the font size be 9-point font, and then I'm going to do the font style be normal, because when some of the data, like here for instance, is very bold, very big, and it'll look a little bit different. So I want to make sure that this font style from the parent is inherited by all of the boxes, so it's kind of normalized across the screen. So if I right click and go in here, do the box here with the various divs, and you can see the information region, all that is now inside of our div, and it's inside of here. And again, there's opacity, so you can see through the text box. So, yep. So next we're going to go to the info title. So for the info title, we're going to say font size of 12 point, have a margin top of 5% to justify items of center, because you want to justify item center, and we want to align content also center. The width is going to be 75%. The height is going to be 7%, and then the border is going to be inset. You can say border style. I think by default it kind of picks up, but it doesn't matter. But I guess it's nice to keep things consistent. But I'm going to do the border color next of burly wood, because again I just love this color. And then do border radius of 5%, and then margin bottom of 2%. So then if we save this, go back here and refresh, you can see that it is like so. That is right, I'm actually missing two things. I'm going to say align self, because I want to align the self center, and I want to also do text align center too, because it looks much better when it's centered. Yeah, you'd probably increase the font size, but then what we're going to do is copy paste this, except for the 12-point font. You don't need that. So do Control V. So instead of the top being 5%, we're doing 3%. And then you want to do a text indent here after the align at 3%. And then we want to have everything else stay the same except the bottom is going to be 1%. And again, you can take this and change it however you want. Yeah. So country is there. And then except instead of text line center, you want text line left. That was, there you go. Yeah. Again, you can change it to how you want it and how you want to fit it. And actually, I don't like the 12-point font. Let me change it to see how this looks. Let's make it 14. Yeah. Again, you can change it however you want, but if that's the case, then I may as well make this 14 too. There you go. And again, you can make it look more pretty with the CSS if you want, but I just want to keep things a little bit more consistent across the board. So then, instead of having 3% here, again, I'm just going to copy paste this code, so it's pretty much repeatable from here on out. So you just do 14% font size, or 14 point for me font size, margin top 4%, 3%, 75%, 7, make sure it's left indented, inset, Burleywood 5.1. Just see how it looks. Yeah, it looks a bit better. Then if you want to stay consistent, you can move the region from down here to be above the country info. That way you have it set up like so. I apologize, I probably should have done that earlier, but yeah. There's that. So then I'll fix that. Then you do this. Do the population, the area square mile. That looks good. The GDP. Yeah, that looks good. And then the climate. Yeah. So as you can see, the information is up here, and there's still some space on the bottom, so you can change the size or shrink the height if you want. But yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Again, click on the buttons, nothing happens, but you have this right here. So now that we have that taken care of and we have this taken care of, what we now want to do is, when clicking on the first, we want to add the JavaScript. So we want to click on this button, we want the box to disappear and reappear, and we click on this countries here. We want to have this go away, and we want to have this go away, and we want to have this show, because by default this should not be here because there's nothing to look at. So let me go back here, and then under my info box, and set the display to none. So on my case it's line 153, set to none. So get rid of that, because now that we have it how it looks like on the screen, we can get rid of it. So whenever it appears, it'll appear like so. So now that we have this done, let's go back to the JavaScript, and this should be the last of the things which we need to fill in order to have our project be complete. So welcome back. This is the last of the tutorial with regards to the JavaScript and everything. So we have our data here, the scene, the camera, the renderer, the controls, the Raycaster. We have the bump map, earth map, material. We have the clouds. Then we have the scaling, the creating of the background. We have the lights, scene objects. But now what we want to do is go to here and have our functions for the show and hide of the box, as well as have the functions created for the data being clicked on. So I'm going to first uncomment this, because I do want to make this mobile friendly. But first and foremost, yeah, I do want to make this, so I'm going to create a function for that after I create this next function. So I'm going to say let hidden is equal to false, and then I'm going to create a function called hide instructions. Because it's a function, you need parentheses. Make sure you have a colon. I have been neglecting my colons, so let me just go through and add my colons. Yeah. Okay, that's good. So yes, so hide instructions. then I'm going to say hidden is equal to the opposite of hidden. So is not equal to hidden, or is not hidden. And I'm going to say if hidden, open close curly braces, I'm going to say document dot query selector. Then in here, I'm going to get the ID, which in this case is the pound sign or hashtag, whatever you want to use, whatever phrase. And then because it's the instruction box that I want to toggle, if you look back at our HTML, up here I have my info box, and this holds the info. I have my display box, it holds all of this, and then I have my instruction box, which holds my instructions. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this ID, instruction-box, and I'm targeting it with JavaScript. So I'm saying query selector, find this ID instruction box, and I'm going to set the display style. No, that happens sometimes. I'm going to say .style .display, because this is the display property that we have right here. CSS display. So this is the same thing as the CSS selector. I'm going to set that equal to none. So we're saying if it is hidden, then we're going to set to the opposite of hidden and have it be none. Otherwise, we're going to say document dot query selector, and we're going to we're going to pass it in instruction box again. Instruction box, and say dot style dot display, and then because I have mine set to flex, it's going to be flex, but you can set it to wherever you want. So because I have this function here, what I have to do is go back to my HTML and actually have it call the function. But before I do that, if I tried just doing it this way, actually, I tried this before and it wouldn't work because I'm using, for some reason, it just wouldn't work for Node. So what I had to do instead was create another variable. So I'm going to say let instruction clicker, and I'm going to say equal document dot get element by ID. I can say instructions and then I'm going to say construction instruction clicker dot add event listener, and in here I'm going to pass it the function click, say hide instructions because that's the function, and I have it set to false because I do not want it triggered unless it's called. So if I save this and I refresh this, so you have that means something's not on touch is not defined. Yeah, so just get rid of that for the time being. Refresh this, globe appears. So then if I click on this, see how it disappears and reappears. You're having the JavaScript target this box right here, and whenever you have this button, listen for a click, and on that click it will make it disappear and reappear like so. So very cool. You can play around with the CSS and have animations and stuff added to it if you want, but just to get things a little bit easier and up and running, I wanted that to occur. I wanted that to happen. Actually, let me just comment this out until I get to it. So next, what I want to do is go down to the window click right here. So on the window click, I'm going to have all this be the same, but instead of console logging, I want to actually add the data to the I'm going to target the divs and add the data from when we clicked from the object or display on the text. So I'm going to say document dot query selector, and here I'm going to pass it the ID, which is in my case region, and then I'm going going to say dot inner text is equal to, and I'm going to pass it new text. I'm going to say region colon space plus, because this is a string, intersects sub-0, which is the first object clicked on. I'm going to say object dot user data dot region. Then I'm going to say document dot get element by ID, and then you don't have to pass the pound sign because it knows it, because that's the ID. So you just say region, and I'm going to say style dot color, and have it set to the intersects first object object user data dot color. That's why I stored this as a user data. That way you can just, it makes it easier. Then I'm going to say document dot query selector. Then again I have to use the pound sign. Country info. And I'm going to say dot inner text is equal to country colon space plus intersects sub-0, because it's the first object that we want, dot object dot user data dot country. Then I'm just going to pass this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more times, because we want the language. And we want this being language. Want that be the language. Then we want the population. So we want this to be population. Then for here we want the area dash sq dash mi, area mile square. There is a way you can have this be a superset text, but when I tried doing this, it made all the text small and then it wouldn't work, so I just have this as an object. But you can there's a way you can make it superset. So I'm going to do area, so the user data, instead of the dashes, it's underscores. And then for here, it's going to be GDP dash per dash capita. And then I'm going to say here GDP per capita, and then it's there, and I accidentally added one too many. And then again, I try to be consistent for my IDs, that way it's easier to copy paste. So instead of dashes, it's underscore. And then the last one is going to be climate. So in this case, just climate, and then we just take this and put it like so. So that should be it for this. So if we go back to here, refresh, then nothing's going to happen again because I don't have it set up. So let me just set this to, yeah, it's not going to set up because I don't have it set to display. But let me change that actually to flex, and then let me set this to false. So let me refresh this, then we'll have the data up here. And just to show you that it works, if I click on this button right here, intersects, that's because I misspelled intersects. Yeah, here we go. Intersects. That should be it. So if I refresh, click on here, and as you can see, it now appears Northern, United, all that good stuff. Yeah, that's why I had the font size not be 14, because it just does not look beautiful. So let me go down here and fix that, actually. Let me actually change it right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Change it from 14 to 12 point. There we go. Save that. Refresh. Loads the data. Once it loads, click on here. There you go. Much better. Yeah. I mean, there still is a lot of space, so make it look pretty however you want, but the data loads and it now changes based upon how you click on it, so that's cool. True, and then I need to set the flex to none on the info box. Go back here, that should be not appear, and cool, and the data is loaded. Awesome. So now from here, what we want to do is I'm going to now initiate the touch, so just so I can have it initiated. Actually, no, I think this is for the second video. Yeah, so I'm going to do another video where I make this responsive. So I'm going to have this just commented out for the time being. And I'm going to move on to actually, when you click on the point, I want to have it yeah, it looks good. So from here, what I'm going to do now is go to the end, the last function, and I'm going to have it, yeah, there's a country. Where did I put animate? Animate's at the bottom right here. Yes, so instead of having this being called, what I'm going to do is come above here to where the country is, and I'm going to create a function called let country info equal document dot get element by ID, and then this is going to be the country ID in our HTML, and then I'm going to have this country info dot add event listener, just like before, be a click. So whenever that button's clicked, I want to call this function. I don't need to have parentheses. So when I click on this button right here, it should display the flex box along with the data. Well, it'll display the data, that way you click on it and the data is being clicked on. But inside my function here, that's why I added this comment, because I want to actually display the flex box and remove the title and everything. So I'm going to say under here, document.querySelector, do a £, or hashtag instruction box, instruction-box. Have that do style.display equal to none, and do document.get element by ID, and because this is an ID, you don't need to add the £, you just do title-box dot style dot display, have that equal none, because we don't want to have the title be shown once. And you can do document dot get element by ID, and then we want to look for the info box, and then I want to do style dot display is equal to flex. So you want to show hide needed and unneeded elements. So when I go back here and click on this, when I click here for countries, the box should display, and then the instructions and the main title disappear, but you can always bring the instructions back by clicking on the instruction box. Just so you know, it does take a couple seconds to load because the data does, yeah, I have to fix this. So it does take a couple seconds for the data to load. It's going to lag a little bit. If you notice here, the GDP per capita is undefined. That's because when I have it clicked on, first make sure I have it, because it was displaying earlier, but it's yeah, that's why it's right here, it's GDP. I am a bit dyslexic when I type, so sometimes I'll need to say GDP and I say GPD. So now if I refresh this, click on this, then okay, yeah, GDP per capita is not defined, GDP per capita is not defined, GDP. It's because I'm not passing it in. Yeah, so it's GDP per capita. Go back here, go over here, GDP per capita. So then let me try this one more time. Click on countries, this disappears, these disappear, this reappears. Yeah, click on here, and now I have the GDP per capita. That's my fault. I have a bit of dyslexia when it comes to typing. But as you can see, the camera, when you click on it, you know, some of these things, they don't have climate, and I probably should have cleaned the data a little bit better and, you know, put commas and everything, but it's a nice overview of this. But as you can see, when I click on it, it does not go to the point. It just kind of it just shows you the data. It doesn't show you what point you clicked on. So I'm actually going to add the function under the intersects for the window, and that code is as follows. So after we do our intersects, and whenever we find whatever we clicked on, we want to have the camera point to it. But in order to do that, first we have to get the intersect point. So I say const item is equal to intersects sub 0, and do var let point equal item dot point, and then I'm going to do let cam distance is equal to camera dot position dot copy, and I'm going to copy the point dot normalize dot multiply scalar of the cam distance. So what this should do is it sees the point, it has the point equal what it's intersected, and then it sets the camera distance to the copy of this point, but it multiplies the scalar out, so whenever you click on the point, it will show you that point. So again, the box still works. Click on countries, go over here, click on here, and now the point that you clicked on, whenever you click on whatever point, it will let you know what point you clicked on. You can also add a hover effect too, where you can see what if you hover over a point, it will change color, and then you can also have it change the color when you click on a point too. But for this example, I didn't want to go into the too advanced options of this, but it's all here on the website. They have plenty of examples to choose from for hovering and all that, which you can more likely go over and copy paste. Yes, so that is that. From what I'm aware, I'm quite positive that is all that this really entailed, this data. So I hope you all enjoyed. It seemed pretty fun to create myself, and there weren't a whole lot of tutorials on Three.JS, and I was needing to do this for a hackathon. so I just wanted to share what I learned, so hopefully someone else will also enjoy this as well. So if you enjoyed it, please leave a like and thumbs up or subscribe, whatever you want to do. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this. Have a good one.